hereby call to order the board of workshop of the Board of Trustees of the East Central Independent School District being held on January 8, 2026, and beginning at 5 p.m. to order. Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ginger Frisenline.
Here.
David Santos.
Yes, ma'am, here.
Randall Gearhart. James Logan. Del Brazil is here. Emilio Carrasco.
I'm here.
And Madam Monique.
Here.
Princess. All right.
Thank you. The next item is prayer and pledge.
Give our name for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just come before you, thanking you for this day, Lord. We thank you for a new year. We thank you for your many blessings upon ISD. We ask that you come into this meeting today. We ask that you give us wisdom and knowledge with every decision that needs to be made. Give us strategy, Lord, and help us to shine. We ask all these things in your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I don't believe we have any public comments, so we're going to work on into the work session. Item 5.1, discussion of policy review committee's review of the additional administrative regulations, CSA regulation and DEC regulation. Mr. Toscano?
Yeah, so trustees, as part of the board policy, previous board policy adoption, coming off the last legislative session, obviously was very robust. The board has already adopted associated policies. In those policies were several requirements for the superintendent to then create aligned administrative regulations. So we've done that, and no action is going to be required here. We just want to bring it back for you to be aware of. You have a hard copy, it's a high-level summary of all of those in your miscellaneous folder if you want to read through those. But there's a few that we want to just call your attention to tonight, and then one in particular that we want to spend a little more time around as it relates to employee leave. So I'll turn it over to Mr. McKay.
Yes, sir. So again, like Mr. Toscano said, I'll just reiterate that these are all in relation to policy that's already been approved, or it's legal policy, so it's not even anything we can adjust with that you require the superintendent to develop these regulations. So what I put in the front is just a summary. It's a one-pager. It's really one and a little bit of another page. So if you look at this document, it's not highlighted like that. It looks like this for y'all. This is just a summary of all of the ones that we gave you. We've given you the draft copies of all the regulations if you want to look in detail on that. But we'll just start first with the CSA regulation. And essentially this regulates the utilization of private spaces in district level facilities. Particularly, this is all in relation to the statute about the gender specific restroom and locker room use, that students and or visitors are only allowed to use the locker rooms of their designated gender, and we have to do everything in our policy or in our regulations to ensure that procedures are in place so that only those with their identified gender are the ones that are using. So if you go through it very quickly, in the third line down, it says individuals whose sex is opposite to the sex designated for a private space does not enter the private space. So we have to make sure that we have clear signage and that information is put out there. We've been working, there are some exceptions, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So the idea when you look at the first bullet is these regulations help us to cover locker rooms and restrooms, so how we have those identified and labeled. Particularly when you think about the second bullet, that temporary changing places and designations of multiple occupancies, so like athletics and band and performance facilities. We put in some protocols already in place where we put clear signage. An example would be when basketball season's going on, and let's say girls play on Friday night at the gym. Well, they have to use the boys' locker room for the visiting team to change in. We've got clear signage on the outside of it now that says girls' locker room, you know, from this time to this time, and nobody's to enter at any point beyond that. So that is one of the exceptions. And there are a few other exceptions with things like a custodian or maintenance worker, medical professionals, or others that need to render aid may go into those spaces, but we have to make sure that there's concessions that they clearly not going to ensure that nobody's ever in the state of undress. So that's what CSA regulation covers for us. It matches what we've got now in policy, and that's at CSA legal. So there's no local regarding that. That's all straight from the 89th legislative session. DED just covers, these are all policies we've had in place for years, but it now requires administrative regulations. Just how do we utilize vacation days? Nothing's changing. It's in our employee handbook. Now we just have administrative regulations that tie to it. DECA just clarifies FMLA, so when an employee has a personal and or a family-related illness thing that they have to take care of that requires them to be away from work for some time, this just clarifies what's already in policy that we have. Again, we just require now to develop a regulation. DEC2 is around leaves and absences for professional development. DEC4 is leaves and absences around court appearances. It delineates between whether it's a personal court appearance or it's a court appearance because you were subpoenaed because of something at work. It happens sometimes with administrators. If a student's involved in a legal situation, an administrator may be subpoenaed to go to court to testify that they're covered, that they get a leave day for that. They don't have to use their own personal day. Essentially is what that means. Go to DEC6, it's around how we cover jury duties. Again, none of these have really changed, just that we're required to have regs. And the DEC7 is about military duty. We do have some that have been in reserves, that have had to step away for some time. So just what is covered, what's not covered, it's inside of there. Again, these are all things we've had for years. A lot of us have been minor tweaks throughout the years as we've gone. We just now have to create regulations per policy moving forward. The one I do want to call out though a little bit is the DEC8. All we've done is take down the number of leave days that are designated for state and local. Nothing of that has changed. Everything is staying the same. There are a few amendments to it that we just want to be really clear. If you go to the first bullet, one of the things that we want to call out at this moment is that dock days, dock time. When employees, particularly when we think about when teachers miss or exceed the number of leave days throughout the year, the impact that that has on student learning. We can imagine that when teachers are not there, a sub, a worksheet, a video can't do the same job that a teacher can being in the classroom every single day. So all this is now saying in this regulation is if you exceed your number of leave days and you are now in dock, your position is under review. We can have a conversation. Now, obviously, looking at impact of student learning outcomes and achievement, and review just means we may have a conversation all the way to possible disciplinary action to even termination if necessary, because we know that it is impacting student learning. So that is being put in there. Of course, staff still have protections. So if there's TDL or FMLA because they have to be out because of those things, those are exclusionary. We don't call those in on that, but essentially what we're trying to do is hold the standard, say we need you here in order to hit our achievement outcomes and for students to learn, and this is why it's really important. The other thing is no matter how many days you have in your bank, I'll use myself as an example. I have over 180 days in my leave bank because I don't miss work. Regardless of the number of leave days that I have in my bank, we're capping it in the regulations at 15. That you still cannot use more than 15 of your leave days in a year. Again, not talking about protected leave, but we're particularly talking about the leave regarding that. Because again, what is the impact of that? If we're not at work and we're not in our schoolhouses and we're not teaching kids. So part of that is when you think about if I'm in my last year of teaching or my last year as a school principal and I got 180 days of leave built up, well, I want to just take every Monday and Friday off for the rest of the year. Well, now this is basically saying if you are abusing that and you go above 15 days, according to administrative regulation, you're now under review. We need to have a conversation because it's impacting learning, it's impacting kids, it's impacting the campus, whatever that may be. So that's also one that's kind of new in there. And then it also delineates when you go to the third bullet down at the bottom that campus employees, there are certain what do I want to say? That we are not allowing discretionary use of leave. So you are deciding to take an extra day of a vacation or something like that on these very critical days. we're eliminating that at this point, that they're not gonna be allowable.
So the first week of a new semester.
Yeah, first week of a new semester would be an example, the day before, the day after a school holiday, if you turn it over, the day scheduled for the end of semester, end of year exams, day scheduled for state mandated assessments, or even our professional or staff development days. Those are days that we're trying to build skill, get them to where they need to be. So what we're doing with this, to clarify it, is, again, this is all in our employee handbook, but we want to call it out. So we've got a one-pager that you also have access to. It's in the very back of your packet, that was attached to all of this. That we also ran through the principals yesterday, let them look at it, and we made some adjustments to it based on their feedback of it. It's just, we want our employees to know that, be aware that this regulation will be taking effect starting today, and just dive into the employee handbook if necessary, pay attention to it, but these are some things that we just want you to be aware of. So we've gone through it with the school level leaders, so they're aware, so they can answer questions of any of their staff, particularly their teachers that may have it, but this is going to be going out across the district.
It applies to all employees.
It applies to, and it does apply to all employees.
All employees.
And it's effective.
It's effective, it's going out, it's being published tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
And communicated out formally tomorrow, and it's effective as of tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's already, we've already been following this.
Yes, correct.
It's just bringing attention to and
That's
maybe
it.
honing in a little more.
Yes, sir. And now just following the
It's not like
statutory requirements that we develop a regulation on.
Okay.
What is new, to be clear, is the triggering of a employee review, employment review, if you violate any of this. So we wanted to codify that and formally say, if you exceed 15 days, if you take leave after the first week of a semester, or before or after a holiday, and abuse your leave in any of the ways that we've described here, your position is under review. That's not discretionary anymore.
So what jumps out at me is professional or staff development days, right? So you're saying they can't miss that? What if?
Discretionary, so if they're sick, they can't have that, but they're not to be scheduling
I got you.
nail appointments and stuff like that on those.
Or extending a
Or
weekend.
extending a weekend for vacation.
Pretty sure I know the answer to this one, but when it comes from legislation and we have to change policy and we get charged for that, that's an unfunded mandate. They don't allow.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and these are as a result of policy,
Right.
right? So this is the administrative
So we have
side.
to find the money to change all the policies that Texas is telling us that we have to change.
Give us a few, yes, ma'am.
Another question, if I may. These acronyms, CSA, DED, VECA.
They align to the board policy,
So-
codes.
Okay, so those codes. And then secondly, that the sign put up on the boys' locker room that's designated specifically for girls, is it just gonna be a written one with tape that could fall off and something could happen, or are we having one made to actually affix to?
We have ordered one, but it has not come in yet, but Miss Ariola and her staff have been very good about it, because we've also, one of our other requirements is we communicate with the families and the parents, so if they know that it's on night that they are not able to have access to their locker room, it's not after to the opposing team is. So we're also communicating with that any of the students are impacted, but it's a pretty thick, heavy, it's like, I don't know how many times they laminated, it's super heavy laminated, and they do tape it, and I've seen it for myself, and it's up, and it stays, so it is.
Fair enough, I just want to make sure it wasn't a written note that.
No, sir, yeah, it's printed, it's bright yellow, it stands out on the door, you can't miss it when you walk up to it, that it's being used by the opposite sex, so you're not to be able to enter it.
All right, thank you.
It's a great question.
Okay, anything else? The next item is 5.2, discussion of geotechnical services for new elementary school number 11.
Yeah, trustees, so we'll be bringing a recommendation for those services at next week's meeting. Of course, geotechnical services are, in order to procure those, are kind of like architectural services. The provider needs to have demonstrated the ability to perform that scope of work at a fair market price. And so what we thought we would do tonight is talk a little bit about geotechnical services, what that entails, and not make any assumptions that everybody in the room understands what the scope of geotechnical services are. And then shed a little light on who will be recommending and why. And so Ms. Gonzalez is here to share this conversation with me. Mr. Thomas was unable to be here tonight. He had a family emergency in Houston that he had to get to. The geotechnical services are obviously geos is a preface for geology. So obviously we're talking about dirt work, we're talking about soil sampling, we're talking about evaluation of the condition of the site, which informs the design, right? It informs everything from the design of the foundation, stormwater requirements, detention ponds, basically ensuring that the site is suitable for the construction project program, and again, advises the design professionals from an engineering perspective based on testing and data, what that design needs to include. And so we're going to be bringing a recommendation for Arias and Associates, and the reason we're bringing that recommendation is because they've done the geotechnical work at Ballard, at that site. They've done it most recently as well, the geotechnical work at Victory. And so we're recommending Arias to continue doing the geotechnical work at Elementary 11. And again, the requirement is that they've demonstrated the ability to do that scope of work. And so based on their previous performance for us, we definitely have determined their capacity to do that. And of course, they're doing it at a fair value for the district. So Stevie or I would be happy to answer any questions about that. Just wanted to make sure we were kind of level setting on just what is the geotechnical services entail.
Where did they perform work for us already?
Yeah, Valor and Victory.
And 10, elementary 10, this is for 11.
Yeah, 10 is it's 10.
10 is under, the one, the
Victory?
new one, no.
The one we just broke ground on
Stewart.
1346. Yeah. As well. Yes, ma'am.
Right in the very front, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, there, obviously a couple of years went by from each of those other projects. Did we take X amount of bids, you know, and then obviously, you know, they would stand out for the work that they did, the price that they delivered, you know, did we accept several others, or were we just recommendation based on what they've done previously?
In this case, we do it by recommendation, and
Okay.
we don't necessarily have to do the bidding process for this. We have used other geotech services for other projects, but we find that Arias has been very thorough in their testing. We like the way that they come out and they check the work before they send the reports. They've been very consistent in answering questions and being readily available for us.
Okay.
I was thinking, and reflecting back when in tradition, when we had that situation of what, I don't remember all the specifics, but I know it was quite a situation. So, has it always been called geotech? I couldn't remember.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the same kind of a process. Now, that was something that didn't have anything to do with the building, right? Did we
So-
found this-
Thank you for bringing that up. So it's a different provider than the one we used for that project. But what we learned through that process, because we have had some movement at the Tradition facility, none of which outside of the scope of engineering guidelines. In other words, the building's not going to collapse or fail and there's nobody in danger. But what we learned about the industry is there are minimum standards, right, for boring, for example. With Arias and with our requirements since that experience, we exceed the minimum standard in evaluating the condition, and therefore, for example, the foundation at Honor is very different than the design of the foundation at Tradition. It's in the industry they would call it over-engineered, and that's just because we wanted to make sure that we didn't have the same experience that we had at Tradition. And again, I want to emphasize, we have learned through all of the secondary and tertiary evaluation with other geotechnical assessments that the building is not going to fail. It's appropriately designed. It's not over-engineered, and therefore we have some movement that has created some visible cosmetic, if you will, cracking on sheetrock and that we've had to address. And so we've responded more aggressively with our scope of work expectations since.
And I just brought that up because I didn't think you weren't on the board then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So the building's not gonna fail, we just had to do some additional work now that we've lived in it to aesthetically clean that up, because it moves, it's called I'm gonna use wrong acronym, because it's not an education acronym, but it's PDR rating, basically how much a building is allowed to move by design. It's within the scope of allowable for this particular type of soil in the region and based on the testing data. We don't want our buildings to move to the extent of the thresholds, and so we've since begun to over-engineer them. So we don't want to have to come back and clean up cracking on sheetrock. But again, it's not failing. Doors aren't, everything's functioning.
And we learn.
And we learn.
All right. Next item is 5.3, discussion of 2024-2025 school district audit. Mr. Toscano?
Yeah, so next week, we'll have a representative from Coleman Horton and Associates come and present the board with their opinion of the books. And but I wanted Judy to talk a little bit about what that process entails, because we've not really talked about that as a group. They come and provide the audit. It's very professional, it's very comprehensive, it's a huge document, and they give us the opinion of whether that audit had any findings or whether it was clean or anything in between. But to get to that point, there's quite a bit that happens, and of course, I think Judy has quite a bit of anxiety during that time because it disrupts her entire life and her team's entire life. But.
Well, let me just start off with our audit. And sometimes I think it's the best time of the year is when the audit's complete, and sometimes I think it's the worst time because that means we're going to start all over again. But what happens when we do with the audit, it really doesn't just happen when the week that they come here. It starts really in July. They'll start asking us for information that we upload into their portal. You'll all get those little questionnaires. We send out numerous questionnaires to banks, to our attorneys, and so forth. And so there's a lot going on before the end of August 31st. And then we start loading up all this different information that they'll ask for us to upload in the portal, whether it's invoices, whether it's teacher contracts, whether it's sick leave days. They want to see it all. And so we'll start doing that in September. We also have to do a massive spreadsheet of accrued payroll for every day a teacher worked in August. It's massive because we have to book that information. So we're having to get that information to them also. They look at TRS. They look at all of our bank recs. They look at all of our investments. Whatever they want to look at, they're looking at. And they ask to see any invoice above $10,000. So you know that there's a lot of invoices that we have to pull. And so they get that information, and then they come to our office, and they sit in the conference room for a week, and they start asking for more. And so then they start finishing up of the information that we need to give to them. And then basically, after about a week, they're done because they audit probably about 20, 25 school districts. I will say we're very lucky to have Coleman Horton because they know school district accounting. A lot of CPA firms do not. But they come in, they finish up with every information that we need, that they need, and then we are at their really beck and call after they leave. If they find something, they call us, we send it to them. With our construction this year, there's been so much depreciation, and I am thankful forever for Shannon because she handles all the depreciation for all these projects, and that's a lot of work. So there's a whole lot more to it because of the fact that they have to follow their rules. they are required to follow GASB, which is General Accounting Standards Board. And they're out in Connecticut. It's an independent firm that is, every school district, every government body has to go by their rules. And sometimes I think these people up there need to find some other things to do, because they come up with some of the craziest things that they want school districts and accounting to do. And they added more to it this year, which the auditors had to do a lot more research on their part. In fact, we had to do for every employee we had to do a spreadsheet of what leave they had 3 years ago, what leave they've used since that time, where they're at right now, and what is their pay right now. So when we have 1,700 employees, it took quite a length of time to get it. And that was another rule from GASB. So, you know, like I said, I am thankful for the ladies I work with, because they all helped on get that information to them. So it's not only GASB that requires it, TEA also requires that. So every year we have to, per the law and TEA, we have to have an independent lawyer, an independent auditor come and do our books. And so that's what Coleman Harden does. And then what they have to do, then they have to upload it to TEA. And then I have to go in there and I have to make sure everything is correct in their upload. I also have to make sure that everything that is uploaded matches our PIMS data. And that's really massive, because the PIMS data sometimes doesn't match up with the fiscal years, and I'll get a fatal error. And Dave probably has heard more about fatal errors than anybody in the world with Allison. But so when we do this, our audit is 100 pages. So you can guarantee that they've been very, very thorough in what they're looking at. If they see something that we're not doing right, they let us know. And their opinion is that we have a clean audit for this year. We've always had a clean audit. So, you know, I'm happy to go over anything that y'all want to talk about with the audit. You know, I will tell you, I gave you just a few pages, because we're still kind of reviewing this to make sure. We'll have it printed by tomorrow. But I didn't think y'all wanted the whole 100 pages. Now, when Derek comes next week, he will go over certain pages with y'all that he feels like is critical for y'all to know about. And I would just give you a heads up. Our fund balance went down tremendously in 1 year. We went down $7 million. And he is aware of it, and we've had a discussion. And a lot of that was because the Vader didn't pass a year ago in November. And also it's because we had to put $2 million into our health program. So that hurt. But with everything that admin council and the board are doing, we're going to try to stop the bleed as much as we can. And but he will go over how child nutrition is doing. He will go over about the different fund balances, and that he has a clean audit. So, but I just wanted to share some of these pages with you, so that way you can just see how everything looks. There's a whole lot of work that goes into it.
So, for the board's understanding and communication, as you interact in the community about this, as Ms. Burns said, the Vader that fell a year ago, not the one that fell in November. When we put that, when the board adopted the budget that year, we adopted a budget which the board gave employees a salary increase. With the Vader included in the budget, which it has to be, it was a balanced budget. But we knew that if the Vader didn't pass, we were going to be short $5 million. In addition to that, our healthcare program continued to hemorrhage, okay, causing us to add another $2 million to balance that.
Hemorrhage, not a good word.
Not a good word. And it's not good to add $2 million. Now, the Vader that fell this November, the difference was we did not have a salary increase baked in. It was contingent upon the Vader passing, because we didn't want the same thing to happen. When the Vader did not pass, we had a discussion about the adjustments that we had already planned to make in the spring this year. And then the adjustments that will be made in the budget the board will consider as they bake the budget out and formally adopt a budget in the next fiscal year. And so what Judy's referring to is we're going to make some substantial changes that we've already begun to make so that we'll be adopting budgets that are balanced, and then we'll be managing those budgets following the same disciplined stewardship that we've historically followed. And we anticipate beginning to bring money back into the fund balance year over year going forward, regardless of the fact that we're struggling with the funding levels that we have been dealt, given just the rate that our tax rate sits at, being that it's the lowest and most conservative in the entire San Antonio area. So that is what it is. We're going to fight and win on the budget side going forward, and we're going to fight and win on the student outcome side going forward regardless. That's non-negotiable.
When you spoke about Shannon, she did a lot of work on the, did you say depreciation?
Depreciation.
Can you maybe touch on that a little bit more?
Okay, well, you have to come up with a formula to depreciate any fixed asset, whether it's a building, whether it's a bus, and you have to depreciate also by what, for a building it has to be, okay, by function. So how much is tradition used in the classroom? That's function 11. How much is the depreciation for where the cafeteria is? That's 35. It's a very complex formula that you have to figure out how much by each school.
So
should-
each campus, you have to go like room by room by room and.
Yeah, what Shannon does is she
And
uses,
departments.
yeah, Shannon uses the blueprint and of the school, and she's able to do that. And she has a very good formula of how she does that. Like I said, I'm very, very nice to her because I don't go, you know. And so the depreciation, and also the auditors help some of that. And then also another thing that we have to do is we have to, on our, any kind of debt service that we have local, that if we have a contract that's more for a year or two, we have to figure out how much to charge per year. And we did use a software company, but it was costing us $20,000. And Shannon said, hey, I can do this. So the auditor helped her on that. So that's another thing you don't see that in here, but it is huge.
And as far as the healthcare benefits program, again, you guys realize that y'all are aware that you guys terminated our last provider. We redesigned our plan. Our new provider is exceptional. We just got an update on some of the data and how it's trending and the utilization of the new plan, and the data is trending exceptionally well. Our employees still have great access to great care. Satisfaction is very high, and our costs are low. So we're definitely going to curtail that issue by design, and we haven't sacrificed quality for our employees. So more to come. It will get better from here. The good news is we do still have $20 million in fund balance.
Judy, with regard to the audit, what are they, can you talk to anything specific, whether it's this previous audit, the last one, or what deficiencies you might have come across? What are they uncovering? What are they looking for?
Well, they're looking at everything.
Okay.
They're looking at all the bank accounts that they reconcile.
Okay.
Are all the entries
Okay.
posted correctly? They're looking at internal control. Okay, if you're opening an invoice, and I'm very anal, is a very word to say, that if you're opening invoices and you're not paying a bill, I make everybody to do certain different things so we have internal control. They watch that. They look at everything they do look at curriculum. They look at special ed, they'll pull out special ed information. They'll look at child nutrition for their free and reduced applications to make sure they're accurate. They look at a lot of things, and they will let me know if we weren't providing the correct and we're doing incorrectly, they would put it in the audit.
Yeah, and then you guys even receive a survey that you fill out for conflict of interest disclosures and all of those sorts of things as well. It's all, lots of surveys, in addition to all the data and evidence of documents that we provide that they have to review. And it's not just the 7 days, it's the culmination of it, as Judy explained. But it's from August to the 7-day period.
And
It's
it lasts
happening.
till almost November. And not only do they look at our records, they'll pull records at the school. Let's say, for instance, high school has a student activity fund. They'll pull invoices there, they want to make sure they'll look at our procedures, they make sure that our procedures are good. So they really do a thorough job of looking at everything.
When you spoke about, when y'all go out to the community and you get questions asked, we do have, people do ask questions, and when we get to say, we have a clean audit all the time, yay, what do you hear from other districts that, why they don't, if they don't? Does that make sense? Like, other district that maybe you communicate with, like, wow, well, you got, Mr. Toscano, you have, this is awesome, we're having issues with blank.
Yeah, I mean, I can't give any specific examples of conversations that I've had, but, you know, things that things that we'll all hear, because these things, if you do have issues with an audit, they do turn up in public communication to the media. And there's a lot of, sometimes there's breakdowns in internal control, there's unethical behavior that was not caught because of the lack of internal controls. And you've got basically public money, federal money or state money that gets mismanaged. And those things are everything on the continuum from basically unethical, immoral, and terminable to criminal. And so organizations, including school districts, sometimes find themselves in those circumstances. We do not, will not, ever. And the first rating also is a reflection of what is discovered in the audit. And so when the first rating continues to come back as superior, and of course, recent years, perfect 100s, of course, with the fund balance taking a hit this year, it will be impossible to score 100, but we can still have a superior first rating. And we'll be moving back towards that 100 as we continue to build that fund balance over the next few years.
Wow. I, as you were talking about that, I'm just remembering Joint Commission for Accredited Hospitals.
Oh.
And nobody wanted to be at work. I feel your pain. But we don't have anything to be ashamed of.
No,
I mean,
nothing
we've
to
done a
hide.
great job.
We welcome it.
Yeah.
Well, and really, I will tell you that East Central is blessed to have very dedicated people in the business office, as well around the district. But what you have in the business office is that you have employees who live in the district. And there's nothing better than to have an employee who lives in the district to work in your business
Right.
office, because that's their money. So the ladies are very conscious about what they do, what they see. I mean, they'll tell me right away, I don't like this, Judy. Well, I'm like, okay, you might not like, they didn't buy that, but it's okay, they can do that. But I appreciate it because they are watching every dime, and they really are.
Yeah.
So Derek from Coleman Hart will be here next week. He'll do the formal presentation, a little more detailed review of a few of the key documents, and of course, he'll be happy to answer any questions. And that will be the public action item. It won't be on consent.
Okay. Anything else, anybody? Item 5.4, discussion of RFP 25-11301, Victory Elementary Bond Furniture and Equipment.
Yeah, so I asked Meredith to be here today. She's all things procurement. And before she speaks to kind of the procurement process, Stevie and I just wanted to talk a little bit with the board about what FF&E is. So you've got two major parts to a construction project program. You've got the building construction, obviously that doesn't move, right? And then about 10% of a construction budget is what's called FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, right? And that's separate from the general contractor's contract, right? Usually the design professionals and the owners deal with those movable assets, otherwise called in the industry FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And the reason that they're separate is because they're not fixed, right? And they move, and you need to have internal controls, and you don't necessarily want to use bond dollars. You want to use them carefully when you're purchasing items that are not the construction building, right? So that's a small percentage of the expenditures. And so there's a very diligent process that we follow there, and I wanted Meredith to talk about that because she's knee-deep in it. And up until the final hour next week, will she have everything tabulated and some formal recommendations ready to present because of the due diligence that she and her team exhibit in procuring the FF&E for this project program, and then the next item is for the next project program. So similar information. Steve, anything to add there?
No, I mean, other than we feel like we've done a really, really good job of putting some processes in place and working with Meredith directly and Mr. Thomas to establish some standards that we've been applying here of late for furniture at the elementaries. You know, we're going to open a Ballard, the middle school. We don't really have a comparable to that because it's been a while since we opened the middle school. But really trying to put together a standard package for everything that goes in the classroom, everything that goes in the cafeteria, everything that they need for the teacher's lounge, everything that they, you know, so that when we hand over that campus, it's ready to go. And Meredith has worked very hard. We feel like we have a great partnership. We're putting some good patterns in place so that it becomes a little bit easier every time, and the FF&E becomes standard, and we get better at guesstimating, projecting what those costs will be and keeping them in budget. We've been very lucky, or no, not lucky, it's work. We've been very skilled at making sure we're staying in budget for all of the processes and all the campuses and wings and special projects that we've done so far. So.
And so imagine that, right? You go shopping for new furniture. Imagine not having any guardrails, right? Like, you can get wildly crazy. And you could buy that super bright yellow table that everybody hates and goes out of style in a year. Well, imagine an entire multi-million-dollar school building and a principal that might be there today, but certainly not in that building forever, right? So you got to find a nice balance where you've got the ability to be really efficient, but at the same time, you want it to be operationally effective and support what goes on in those spaces. And so when Stevie used the word standardize and really thinking about our processes and really working closely with Meredith and her team and the users at the end, we've established some pretty good guardrails. You see in our elementaries, for example, very similar packages of what goes on in every classroom so that we don't have something unique in every single building. You know, this principal likes these kinds of tables and this one likes that color desk. Because the reality of it is, with enrollment changing and shifting, you know, we found ourselves many years ago where we needed to move some furniture, or we needed additional furniture in a school, but the furniture in another school was red and they were yellow. You know, so you might have a classroom with red and blue and yellow and black, and it just looks terrible, but it's good equipment, right? You can't really justify buying new stuff, but if it's standardized, then you got the ability to use that stuff as you need, and everything still looks equitable and fair, right? So, Mary.
May I come to the front
You
so
can,
no one
please
gets
do.
like a
Please do.
crick in their
Please
neck
do.
looking back at me?
We left the spot open right there so you can get right in the arena.
Thank you for bringing me forward. So reality is, even what Ms. Burns was talking about the audit, doing formal procurements is a process to be ensuring that we are following our statutes and policies regarding how we come about acquiring and procuring our different items, and looking at the schools themselves as, say, Victory. It is basically the same floor plan that we have had for tradition. And when I took on my position here, of course, we opened Honor very quickly within those years. And so there was already a kind of a structure that was there. And I'm just kind of following that model that I did for Honor, came off of tradition, and now we're moving that into Victory. And as Ms. Gonzalez spoke about, there are sections within a campus, and when you're going out for formal procurement, in our case now it's for $100,000, we know this furniture, such as Honors, was like over $750,000 for all the furniture to open that school at the start of 2 years ago. Well, we want to make sure we have good competition. We do procure a lot of our items through purchasing cooperatives, which means that other people did all the legwork of getting all the I's dotted and T's crossed, and I can just basically go to those individual vendors and acquire. However, when you're looking at the scope of these type of projects, there's a lot of vendors for purchasing, for regarding furniture, and when we're talking about furniture and fixtures and so forth, we really want to make sure that we're kind of providing equal opportunity for everyone to kind of put their 2 cents in and see if they can potentially get part of that bid. And so we design our RFPs in multiple sections. One is telling about the scope of the work, what we want. It's also having them attest that they will follow certain statutes. Like for instance, this particular RFPs, we're giving them a 2-week window of when we want all that furniture to come in. We give them a start date, and we know certain things can come up, but those are the things that we're putting in writing. So they're making sure that they understand this is the expectation, even as much as taking out their own trash, protecting the floor when they come in, making sure that their individuals are vetted in a way that they are of high quality standards themselves, you know. And so the main thing is when you're looking at RFP, it's our way of going out into the public and saying, this is our contract. Okay, this is, and then these are the items that we're looking to go ahead and acquire. However, to be very competitive and at the same time, we do have to provide the opportunity for them to show us an alternative, like something that they don't provide. They can show us an example of something else that is equal like to that in the market, but we still have the ability, because we wrote it in our scope and sequence about how we're going to basically judge and evaluate them on. And so basically on Tuesday at 4 p.m., I had to have anyone that was interested in being part of this bid to be considered as a vendor for this project based on bulk prices and so forth, letting me know your shipping and handling, letting me know all those other things. They had to have that in by 4 o'clock on Tuesday. And so I've been, of course, compiling all that. It's going to take time. I've been working with the administration of those campuses, specifically for Victory, and it's making sure that those vendors also dotted all their I's and T's and going through every line item. So in Victory alone, there's about 300 items that they bid on. We've broken it into categories. So if we know certain vendors, they don't do anything outside of the cafeteria. So we have 2 vendors right now. The only thing they bid on was the cafeteria section, okay? And then they bid on a couple of things in another miscellaneous category that I have. So I just want to kind of give that ideas. So when you're going to be presented next week, is going to be the idea that we are going to award individual vendors by category, because the items that they bidded on, we've gone through to making sure that they're meeting our standards. At the same time, they can meet our expectations with the delivery and all those other details regarding the extraction of their trash, to ensuring that they're also meeting standards of good business and other types of standards along the lines of this. It's also letting these companies tell us what the warranty for each of these items are. And we do look in that very consideration because of the fact that if a desk goes down within 1 year, a lot of the warranties allow us to get a free desk in its placement. And we have definitely have some great vendors out there that have 10-year warranties, 15s. So our custodians know to contact me. I got a desk down. When was it purchased? And that's another thing on inventory. So it's been kind of a combined thing, and I hope I didn't go too much into that. I'm looking for the science.
What we wanted was for the board to feel the amount of passion and persistence and diligence there is in this process, and how involved it is, and how consistent and how reliable her leadership is in ensuring that we're not playing. Like all the way down to the people who are going to be delivering this stuff have to meet certain standards to be eligible to be in our buildings. to the window that you will deliver this stuff is going to be this tight, because we need to get the stuff in the building set and established a certain way so the user's ready to take occupancy of that. And if it requires us to use multiple vendors to award this thing because of all the different components and the complexity of 300 different items, types of items, then that's what we're going to do, because that provides the best value for the district. And it's a lot easier to say we're just going to go through a procurement method that has already been contracted out by somebody else, and we're going to piggyback on that, and we're just going to do that because that's the easy button. Or we can do that where it makes the most sense and customize it all along the way by doing all of the tabulation and all of the due diligence that this requires. And so I just thought it'd be important to bring her out here in front of you guys so you guys can hear from the person in the trenches leading this work.
Yeah, we hear the passion.
Yeah.
and the
I'm
stress
sorry.
And the.
All of
I
it.
just want to explain that a lot of people think that districts, when they go out to RFPs, it's always about the cheapest price. We went out for basically a competitive proposal to the point that outlives us the ability to negotiate. And our rubric, 40 points is based on price, and then 30 points are based on the actual kind of quality of the product and also the ability to meet our standards. And the others are pretty much standard, which is like their references, that they complete everything regarding the RFP, and just some nuances, some other things in within 10 points. So it's a 100-point scale, but as Mr. Toscano said, it is about, we're looking item by item, and we're looking by category. And in that, to making sure we're getting the best for our district, because we recognize that these funds for victory are part of the whole big package of what already has been expended to actually build the building and move that soil and get it all erected. These are the things, and by the way, this is probably gonna be one RFP you will see, and we'll have multiple other ones potentially come back if I cannot procure this other items that we were not able to put in this bid. Victory is pretty sound. It's probably gonna be the only one, but I know that Valor is the next discussion point, and I don't know if we're kind of talking about both of them at this point, or if you have any questions. Okay, so Valor is a little bit more complex because we have now band, and we also have athletics, and we have a lot of other specialized type of programming at that campus. So what you're going to see for Valor is the furniture for all the different sections. It's going to be, there is an athletic section, so we're talking about the game seats. And we're talking about what needs to go in shelving for the rooms and the different storage rooms too. So those are very kind of complex areas, and we know that certain vendors do one thing and some people don't do athletic chairs, which is why, again, we have to kind of really strategically put things in categories so we can ensure that our partners out there that do provide services for us at the same time have equal opportunity to bid on these projects, bring in at the same time maximize our times and resources so we can focus on the things that need to be done. But for instance, for Valor, you're going to see the FF&E. We've already decided when we did this bid that I am by no means an interior designer, and those front offices and that reception area and those co-labs and that cafeteria, they're a little bit different than any of our other campuses. So I didn't want to take that all on my shoulders, so we put it out to the experts out there and say, you give us a proposal. Tell us what we could do in this area, because we did not have any specs set specifically for the middle school area. Those areas of this RFP are going to be postponed until next month, because we're going to have to bring those vendors in here and let them present it more to us and go more detailed to making sure that they are the quality we need for that particular campus. So we even looking at this particular RFP for Valor, I'm only going to bring to you what we can solidify right now, which is our standard stuff in the classrooms, but those unique areas that have an impression for a middle school, because you start talking about spirit things, you start talking about other things, but the main thing is those are going to come back to you. So I want to make sure you're not confused that, why we just did an RFP. We can break the RFP in different ways for you to approve certain sections and then come back and do these sections when that evaluation is completed.
There are two things. I work with procurement I'm in sales, a sales engineer, and I deal with my procurement, and we're fighting all the time. So I can see the passion that you got, so I can
There's a
appreciate
little bit of
that.
nerves too.
I can, you made me sweat. I think I'm sweating listening to Jonah and Lisa a lot of work. Like, okay, we're gonna go to fight with you guys. Secondly, you have an RFP. Is there gonna be a formal RFQ after you've got those
Okay,
proposals? in,
our
or are you talking about-
RFQ, I'm sorry to interrupt you, RFQ is request for qualifications. So when, like Ms. Steve was talking about the engineering for the GO, those are RFQs. So if we did not have anyone that could do that business, we had no one out there that we have an expert, we can go out for RFQs to get those type of individuals who have a license certification. So those are things for qualifications. You're looking for someone that they can do a job because they have the credentials based on that type of expertise. And RFP is I'm asking for proposals from people who are in that field of that actual item. It's not based on a certification, but it's more based on you're doing that type of business.
Interesting, because RFP would mean, give me your scope, that's a proposal, and RFQ would mean request for a quote. So it's
Oh, okay.
selected, now you've selected. a
Okay,
new
thank you.
people,
So
and
that's
now
even
you-
difference between our professions, yes. So ours, RFQ is request for qualifications,
Right, right.
but RFP is request for proposals.
Okay.
And then depending on how we solicit it, then it depends on whether it's concealed, where we kind of keep it all secret, and then we open up, we do more of those for constructions. And then the ones like for this particular things, when they're coming in, then I'm able to open them up and put them in, I don't have, I just open them up and put them in the evaluations. But I do want to say it's going to be a timely situation. And as much as I wanted to give you all exactly who the recommendations are, we have right now about 8 vendors who have put bids in for Victory, and I have about 6 to 8. And the reason I'm saying 6 to 8 because I have some vendors, they only put a bid in for like 8 items, but they still have to be considered, and I have to go through all those particular forms, make sure that they
We don't
are
use-
seeing us to that.
I thought we used Byboard. We don't use Byboard.
So for some, that would be
They
a purchasing
have-
cooperative.
And then we get rebates, so that.
Yeah, so some of the things she will procure come from that type of purchasing cooperatives, but we don't do it for all. That's what I was referring to. So we're to make sure we get best value and the quality specifications that we.
And you
we're
always
looking
say you're
for.
nervous, you always do a great job.
But tell you another just aspect on that, for buy board, the reason we really want to go out is the magnitude of furniture that we're bringing in. We want to get the best price. So a vendor, maybe their standard price on buy board is $272 for that particular chair. I go out there and say I need 600 of these chairs, they may give it to me for $175. But if I say put it under your buy board contract, they're going to sell it to me for $272.
And they do that, they charge the vendor, so it's gonna look like more, but then we get the rebate. That's the only.
A little
difference.
bit of that rebate, yes, correct. We do get that back, but the difference in this particular situation with these, we usually get a better price.
Yeah.
And I also lock these in for 2 years.
Oh.
So if Valor needs to grow based off of, they need, another 20 of these desks, they're locked in at this price for the next 2 years. So that's another thing. And same thing with Victory, will be locked in 2
Right,
years.
if I need 100 chairs, I need 100 chairs.
And yes, and versus if I did buy board, then I would have to also look at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Anybody have anything else?
Good job.
So these specific recommendations will come next week.
Okay.
With the very specific recommendations, as she mentioned, the tabulation will be in there, and all the things listed.
And then I will provide you also the estimated amount aggregate of all the expenses. We do have the flexibility to adjust for prices. So if there's an item that we realize is still really overpriced, we don't want to go with it, we have it written in our scope that we can negate and pull that back. So if we want to go out for bid again, we can do that.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Anybody have anything else? So we ran 5.4 into 5.5. So now the last item is item 6, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Have a motion to adjourn from Ms. Friedenheim. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Santos. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Meeting is adjourned.